Hello, Still Nurse listeners, and welcome to the first solo episode in this season. And this one was one that I kind of felt like would be weird to have a guest. So I'm just going to be talking about maintaining your nursing license. And I'm going to throw a disclaimer in there. By no means am I a professional and do I know all the answers and have everything figured out with this, but I can tell you what worked for me. I worked as a nurse for 3 years after getting my bachelor's. Well, I guess after getting my RN, passing the NCLEX. And then I stayed home with our kids for 9.5 years. And in that time, I did not let my license lapse. And I'm so glad. That is super crucial. You put all the effort, money, and time into your nursing license, hang on to it. Even if you don't necessarily love working as a floor nurse or the more traditional nursing, I really highly recommend continuing to keep your license active because you can use it in so many different areas. But if it's null and void, it's not doing any good. And it's really not, for the most part, in several places I've lived in, not too difficult to maintain. And it's just so worth it. First and foremost, I would say check your state requirements on what you have to do to keep your license active. Every state is going to have their own special set of requirements and it will vary. There will be some similarities, obviously, but each state has their own little thing that they throw in there. So it's really important that you check and see what you actually need to do, how often you need to renew your license, because some places will send reminders and others may not. So you really need to be on top of it and be checking it on your own. As far as where you can go to check, the Department of Professional Licensure, the DOPL, DOPL of your state. So like for Utah's Utah DOPL. Idaho, it's Idaho DOPL. And then you can just search for nursing licensure and it'll pull it up and it will walk you through the different requirements. So there is that option. I did find a cool resource while I was working on switching my license because I have switched my license between 3 different states over the past 9 years. So I have some experience with that. For the most part, it's been super easy. A hassle, but really not too bad. A hassle and it costs some money. One resource that I really thought was neat was actually going to nursejournal.org. I just typed in, I think it was nursing licensure requirements by state, and something came up from nursejournal.org. So it was last updated on September 10th of 2025. So they keep it updated. And it just tells you a little bit about the states that are in the Nurse Compact. And if you don't know what that is, basically there's a big group that have all decided if you have the nursing state compact license, then it allows you to work across multiple states. 41 states are currently part of this compact and 2 territories. If you can get that license, it's totally worth it because it makes it a lot easier to move between states, in my opinion. And it allows you to start working under your previous state. You still need to switch it over to where you moved to, but it allows you to start working rather than like jumping through these extra hoops. So that's good to know, but it talks about that a little bit, which states are in it. And then it has just this whole list. Let's click Louisiana. Why not? And it just says like what you have to do to get licensed if you're a first-time nurse, you're graduating, or if you have something which is called licensure by endorsement. And that's if you're trying to switch your license from another state to your current one, that is licensure by endorsement. This is for Louisiana. You have to have a current government issue photo ID, declare Louisiana your primary state of residence, and a documented degree from an accredited nursing program. And then if you're going by examination, you have to answer some compliance questions, submit verification of out-of-state testing, and paying the necessary fees. If you're doing licensure by endorsement, then you have to have a valid unencumbered RN license, a history of practice in the past 4 years. So not all states are going to have that where you have to have actual practice hours in the last 4 years, but some do. Like Idaho was one that did. And it looks like Louisiana is as well. And no current or pending civil, criminal, or disciplinary actions. They'll tell you the amount for the fee and about the time. And then if you're just renewing, it'll also tell you that they renew every 2 years between October and December. They automatically expire at midnight on January 31st. So it just has all these really useful things. And it says all RNs must also complete a minimum of 30 board approved CE or continuing education hours, or at least 900 practice hours during the 2-year period. So to summarize that, at least for this state, which was Louisiana, I just picked it at random. In order to renew your license, you have to have worked at least 900 hours of actual practicing as a nurse. Or if you haven't done that, then 30 continuing education credits. And then they'll have you pay a fee, do a background check, get fingerprinted, and go from there. So that's just to renew it. If you're doing the licensure by endorsement, which is switching it over, then it's going to add a few things as well. So from my own personal experience, though, I'll share that when I changed, I moved my license from Utah, which is where I got it. I moved it from Utah to Iowa. I didn't practice as a nurse at all. I just got to be home with my kids, and then moved it from Iowa back to Utah, and then Utah to Idaho. So I've moved it a couple times, and it is kind of a pain, but it's really not too bad. It's just kind of a little bit of a hassle. And Idaho was the only one where I actually had to have proof of working as a nurse, which would have been difficult if I hadn't been working, but I had just gotten rehired. So I was able to just work, I think it was 90 days, and then have my employer send employment verification, because that was something that Idaho added. They wanted you to have a certain number of credit, the continuing education credit, the CE credit. They had, I don't remember how many hours it was, but you had to have a certain number of those hours plus a certain number of hours working. Or if you didn't have that, then you had to have employment verification. And there were other things you could do. Like I had a friend who hadn't worked in a long time, and she had to go and shadow someone for a certain number of work hours before she could renew her license. So definitely check it out, because sometimes there's things that may take a while. If you have to earn those hours by shadowing someone or getting work or doing the continuing education, it takes time. So you want to make sure you're not leaving it for like the last week before your license is going to expire. So check it out quickly, figure out how often you have to renew it, when you renew it, and just the whole process. It'll really save you a headache than if you wait till the end. So let's jump into the continuing education hours. What is that? What does it mean? And how do you find it? Because I didn't know at first when I first decided, okay, we're going to have me take a step back and just be home and managing everything and helping the cute little kiddos running around. And what I did is I just asked some nurses I knew who had taken time off to see what did they have to do. And then I looked it up because I was in Utah at the time, looked it up to see how many hours I needed to do. And I just looked online, honestly, to see what existed. And the source that I ended up using is one that came recommended to me by other nurses, and it was rated more highly. And I checked to make sure it was credible, so I wasn't just wasting time and money on something that wasn't going to help me keep my license active. And the one that I use is called NetCE. It is a really great resource that has different licensing things as well, continuing education for doctors, nurses, all these different employment situations. But they have a great set for nursing where you can buy different courses, and it's like nursing journals and things like that, where you actually read through the courses, and then they'll be like, this one's 5 credit hours, this one's 10, this one's 1 credit hour. So you've got to build up to, it was 30 when I did it. I had to do 30 credit hours in a 2-year period. So it's not 1 year. Usually it's 2 years in a lot of cases. But again, check to verify, because I don't know your rules where you live. But it was I wouldn't say easy, because you got to go through and read everything. And maybe reading journals is your thing and you love it. I had a hard time going through some of it because it can be pretty in-depth and very numbers oriented. And I'm not a numbers person, a lot of stats, so it just depends on what you get. But I really like they had a couple packages where it's like, here, buy this bundle and it will be the whole 30 credit hours you need for this 2-year period. And you can just pay everything up front and you get this bundle. The problem with that is you don't get to pick your courses. It's just whatever they threw in there, which can be great. It can be stuff that you're really interested in. So it's definitely a great option. And it was a pretty good price too. I don't remember having it break the bank or anything. Just saying, okay, that's fine. That'll be worth it. It'll help me keep learning and growing. But you can also go through and pick each course that you want and just kind of build your own package, which I did that the last couple times. And I liked that better because I was able to focus in on things that I thought would be useful or more interesting, or an area of nursing that I wanted to know more about. Like at the time, I had never worked in labor and delivery or mom and baby or anything. So I picked a couple areas in maternal health or in newborn health. And then I also thought, I don't understand diabetes as well as I'd like to. So I looked up some diabetes ones, and it was like type 2 diabetes on the rise in children and what's the cause and stuff. So there's really interesting ones that you can get and pick and choose. And really all it has been is you just read through those courses, and at the end of the course, you answer some questions and it says, congrats, you did it. And you just save those little certificates of completion, because if you were to get audited, you do need to have proof that you did those things in those years to keep your license active. I have never been audited. I have an aunt who did get audited though. So she said, definitely hang on to them because it can happen and you need to have proof. So it's a really good way to do that. It is interesting. You do learn some things. The problem I found with doing the continuing education and not working is I didn't put any of it into practice. So do I remember most of what I read? No, I don't. It helped in the minute and it helped me feel like I kind of had my foot a little bit in nursing when I was very far from it at the time. But I definitely didn't feel like I was gaining any skills because I wasn't using that knowledge at the time. So I will say it is useful in some ways, but not enough to really stay up to date with nursing because medical stuff changes all the time, right? Rules change, the recommendations change, the skills themselves can change a lot because they're done in a different order, or we find, oh, that wasn't the best way to do it. We do it this way now. So whether you are going to work the first time or if you were in my case and getting back into work, I will say that it is hard to jump back in for a little bit just because you are trying to use skills you haven't used in a while. But I did like that they made continuing education accessible. And like I said, each state's going to have their own combination of requirements. I mean, you may have to do some continuing education and some practice hours, or you may have to do all continuing education. It's fine. Like Iowa and Utah at the time, I just had to have continuing education hours and prove that I'd done it. And so that wasn't too bad. And then I had to pay a fee, and that was really it as far as keeping my license renewed. So it really wasn't bad. So don't let it be an excuse to not do it because you will totally regret not keeping your license active if you ever need it. Even if you think you never will. I'm pretty sure I shared this story already, but being trained by my first hospice nurse, she was wonderful, great nurse, loved her. She was a grandma, super sweet. Her patients all loved her, the family all loved her, and she was just really good at what she did. But she shared a story with me because I was brand new and just said, I got my license. I worked as a nurse for a long time. She worked in the hospital, it sounds like before, and then decided I didn't need to work anymore. My husband had things covered with his work, and so I would just get to stay home and raise kids. And it sounded like she kept her license active for a while and then decided, why am I doing this? I'm never going to work again. So she let it lapse. And then at some point, I'm assuming quite a bit later, like many years later, her husband's health totally failed. They lost their businesses they owned. They didn't have income for a long time. And so she had to make the tough decision of going back to school. She could have just done a refresher course. That's an option. If your license is gone, you can do refresher courses. But in her opinion, that wouldn't have been as valuable as going back to school and just starting over. I think even after the refresher course, you still have to pass the NCLEX anyways, repass it. So she decided that for her, the best option was to go back through the whole nursing program, retake the NCLEX, and just get licensed all over again. But she was a grandma at the time. And she said it was super hard to go back through, be doing all the homework and be doing the clinicals. It was expensive and a big process. So she just reiterated over and over again, like, do not let your license lapse. And so that's something that's always stayed with me. So I will pound that nail over and over again. Don't let your license lapse, even if you don't think you're going to use it. Keep it going, unless you really just absolutely hated nursing and want nothing to do with it. It is something great to have in your back pocket. And in our case, it's been super useful for me to be able to get back into work and to help provide for our family because we got a large family and it's expensive right now. So having that opportunity to help in that way has been really rewarding. And I'm just so glad that I kept my license so that I can have that opportunity, so that I'm doing something that matters and is important to me as work rather than just getting anything because I need a job, if that makes sense. That's one thing that I love about nursing too, is that if you're moving to a new state, no problem. You can just move your license with you, especially if you're part of the compact. It makes it pretty easy and seamless. Applying for licensure by endorsement is what you're doing when you're trying to move it. And you just got to follow the requirements. Made a handy little tool though. It's just a little slideshow. It's not very long. That just kind of goes through some of the resources that I used to help me figure out how to maintain my license, how to move my license, and just learn all the ins and outs of that to make it so I could pretty confidently get the process done and make it so I could just keep my license with me. There's one source that I really like, which is just the nursecompact.com and how it works. And it talks all about how to move your license. And it was a really useful source. So I've got these different links in the show notes so that you can look through it and see if there's anything that might be helpful there. So to finish up, to summarize, keep your license active, use your state DOPL, so the DOPL, and look up what the requirements are. Just follow through with those and you'll be good. They make it really easy to see what exactly you need to do. So just do what it says on the Doppel page for your state. And then if you're moving it by endorsement and follow the steps. You need to have your current license available to show them. You need to pay the fee, do a background check, fingerprinting, fill out an application. It's really not that bad. If you really don't like doing government processes, it can be a bit of a headache, but it's usually pretty quick. So that is my advice on maintaining your license. Get those continuing education hours done. And sometimes you have to do them even if you are working. So it's valuable to take time to look up what your state requirements are, because you may need a certain number of hours per year plus the continuing education. So make sure you're on top of it. Look into what you need to do so that you can keep renewing your license. And each time you renew, there is a fee to renew your license every time. And you will have to do a couple different steps, but they're making it easier and easier. So it's all online. The last time I had to renew was earlier this year, and it took me 10 minutes on the Doppel page of Idaho to get it done. So it really is not bad. So don't put it off, get it done, and you'll be so glad that you did, whether you're currently working or just hanging on to it for someday if you get to go back to nursing. Hope this helps someone who's trying to figure out what to do with their license. And remember, until next time, you're still a nurse.